The first thing I remember is the sound. Not the beeping. Not the shouting. The sound of something hitting the floor. My body. 1 second I was standing in the glass conference room, laser pointer in my hand, mid-sentence. And the next, I was waking up to cold light, wires glued to my chest, and a nurse saying my name like she was trying to pull me back from somewhere deep and dark. Stay with me. Don't move. Funny thing was, I hadn't planned on moving ever again. Later, a doctor told me my heart had misfired. Not metaphorically. Literally. A full cardiac event. The kind people twice my age pretend won't happen to them either. They said if I hadn't dropped right there, in front of half the office, I probably wouldn't have made it. Someone called emergency services immediately. My co-workers didn't hesitate. They saved my life. My family? They were notified too. I found that out hours later, when a nurse gently asked if anyone was coming. I told her yes. Of course they were. I believed that. That night passed. Then another. Machines hummed. Nurses rotated. I slept in fragments. Every time footsteps paused outside my room, I thought, this is it. It never was. On the third day, I woke up groggy and sore, reached for my phone and saw a notification. I'd been tagged. It was my sister Lila. A photo of her, my parents and my other sister Rowan, smiling around a picnic table by the lake. Sunlight. Drinks raised. My mother's homemade appetizers laid out like a magazine spread. The caption? Family Day. No chaos. And there I was, tagged like a punchline. I stared at the screen until it dimmed. That was the moment something inside me shut off. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just finally. What none of them knew was that this collapse didn't come out of nowhere. I'd felt it coming for weeks. The headaches that wouldn't quit. The dizziness I laughed off. The tightness in my chest I blamed on stress and caffeine. Because slowing down wasn't an option. Not when I was covering part of my mother's car payment. Not when Lila messaged me every few days asking for just a small favor. Not when my father treated his financial mistakes like inherited obligations I was supposed to absorb quietly. People loved to comment on how close we looked online. They didn't grow up as the dependable one. The invisible one. The one who fixed things without being asked, and without being thanked. My sisters could wreck their own lives and somehow still be described as finding themselves. I once received a statewide professional award, and my mother asked if I'd remembered to thank my supervisor. That was it. No pride. No jug. No pause. So I worked. Late nights. Weekends. Automatic payments I shouldn't have set up. Responsibilities I never volunteered for but somehow owned. I told myself it was temporary. Until my body forced the issue. Back in the hospital bed, my phone stayed silent. No calls. No texts. No guardapalegis. Then days later it exploded. Missed calls stacked on missed calls. A message from my father cut through the noise. We need you. Call now. No, are you alive? No, what happened? Just need. I felt nothing when I read it. Not anger. Not hurt. Just clarity. I sat there, still tethered to machines, still dizzy if I moved too fast. And instead of calling them back, I dialed someone else. A number I hadn't used in a long time. Saved under a name I never deleted. My grandfather. He answered immediately. Didn't ask what happened. Didn't ask why I hadn't called sooner. Just said, "Where are you?" When he arrived less than an hour later, he looked exactly the same as he always had. Same jacket. Same steady eyes. Same expression that said he'd already figured it out. He sat down beside me and said almost casually, "So, they finally ran you into the ground too?" I nodded. That was all it took. He stayed. Asked the nurses real questions. Spoke to doctors like someone who expected honesty. Quietly paid for a test my insurance refused to cover. Without making a scene or asking for credit. Then he pulled out a tablet. And that's when we saw the damage. My name was attached to everything. Loans. Cards. Utilities. Insurance policies for cars I didn't drive anymore. Automatic transfers I'd stopped noticing because they'd become routine. I wasn't helping my family. I was propping them up. And the moment I stopped, Everything started to shake. By the time my grandfather left that evening, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Voicemails, texts, missed calls, panic, not concern. Then another message from my father came through. This is serious. Everything is falling apart. Still no mention of the hospital. Still no mention of me. That's when I realized something important. They weren't scared for me. They were scared of losing access. And I had just unplugged the system. The fallout didn't happen all at once. It started politely. My phone buzzed so often the nurses asked if I wanted it moved farther from the bed. I didn't. I wanted to see every call I wasn't answering. My mother left a voicemail using the tone she reserved for neighbors and distant relatives. Oh, sweetheart, we just heard what happened. Why didn't you tell us? As if collapsing at work came with a courtesy RSVP. Rowan texted in long paragraphs about peace and love, and how families shouldn't let stress create distance, which was rich considering she'd stopped replying to me months earlier when I refused to co-sign another lease. Lila went quiet. That was when I knew something was brewing. Silence was never her final move. It was her loading screen. My grandfather came back the next morning with coffee, and a look that said he'd already seen the emails. We went through everything slowly this time. Every account, every connection, every quiet favor I'd convinced myself was normal. I didn't argue when he suggested we start cutting ties. I didn't hesitate either. The automatic transfer to Lila's account? Gone. She used to say she was barely surviving, which was impressive given her frequent beach photos and carefully angled work trips. Rowan's housing deposit? Cancelled. My mother's insurance payment? Removed. She could call customer service like everyone else. Then we got to the co-signed loan. The one Lila hadn't mentioned in months. I flagged it. Filed a report. Not out of revenge, but because I never agreed to be her lifelong safety net. My grandfather didn't lecture me. He just nodded occasionally, like a man watching a story finally make sense. Loyalty, he said once quietly, only works when it goes both ways. By evening, my phone had to be silenced. The messages changed tone. Concern turned into accusation. My mother accused me of being dramatic. Rowan accused me of punishing the wrong people. Lila finally resurfaced with a screenshot of her account balance. What is this? No greeting. No context. Just outrage. I almost laughed. The machine was angry because it wasn't dispensing cash anymore. Then my father escalated. He didn't call. He showed up. At my apartment. I wasn't there, obviously. I was still recovering, still monitored, but my grandfather saw his car idling outside like a threat that had nowhere to go. Later, I got the text. You're destroying everything we built. Everything we built. I read it twice to make sure I hadn't misinterpreted the audacity. They hadn't built anything. They'd leaned on me like a load-bearing wall, and called it teamwork. The first real collapse came faster than I expected. Lila posted a video. No music. No explanation. Just a slow walk through my parents' house. Empty. Not tidy empty. Not minimalist empty. Evicted empty. Bare walls. No furniture. Curtains gone. Front door hanging open like a bad ending. The caption said, "They took everything." People flooded the comments with sympathy. I opened my banking app. The mortgage had defaulted again. They'd drained the equity months ago, paid off Lila's debts, funded Rowan's latest online venture, ignored every warning I'd ever given them. When I stopped covering the gaps, the bank stepped in. I'd warned them once. Just once. They laughed. Now they were filming it. My grandfather made a few calls that night. To his lawyer. To an estate planner. To an accountant I didn't even know existed. That's when I learned something that made my stomach drop. They hadn't only been circling me. They'd been circling him. Rowan had suddenly started taking him to brunch. Lila had bought him a holiday gift for the first time in years. My mother had casually mentioned fairness during one of their calls. He saw it coming. Prepared quietly. Moved everything out of reach. And then, after watching who asked, who took, who waited, he transferred most of it under a new name. Mine. Not as a reward. As protection. Because I was the only one who hadn't tried to claim it. That night, Lila came to the hospital. She wasn't allowed in. I saw her pacing outside, sunglasses on despite the fading light, phone pressed to her ear, rehearsing an argument she never got to deliver. She left after a few minutes. An hour later, a message came through. If you don't fix this, you'll regret it. I didn't feel threatened. I felt finished. Then the hospital staff knocked on my door. There's a woman downstairs claiming to be your medical proxy. I already knew who it was. Rowan. The hospital escorted her out. I thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. When my grandfather returned later, he brought a thick envelope. Inside were emails. My parents had contacted a law firm. They were asking about guardianship over me. They claimed I was unstable, emotionally compromised, making reckless financial decisions after a medical event. They wanted control. Not of my health. Of my money. The same people who hadn't checked if I was alive were now trying to declare me incompetent. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I made a list. Every account. Every shared access point. Every remaining tie. By morning, my lawyer was filing paperwork. Cease and desist notices. Fraud alerts. Legal freezes on anything tied to my name. My paycheck moved to a new institution under a trust my family didn't know existed. For the first time in my life, I felt safe. And that's when they went public. They didn't come for me privately anymore. They came for the audience. Rowan posted the first video the morning after the legal notices went out. Soft lighting. Neutral background. No makeup, but just enough concealer to look fragile instead of tired. Piano music humming faintly underneath like grief needed a soundtrack. She never said my name. She didn't have to. There's someone in our family who's going through something really dark, she said, eyes glossy but dry. We're trying to help her, but she's pushing everyone away. Sometimes when people are hurting, they lash out. Lash out. An interesting word choice for cutting off unauthorized access to my bank accounts. She talked about mental health. About invisible struggles. About how love sometimes means making hard decisions for someone who can't see clearly right now. The comments poured in. You're so brave. Family is everything. She's lucky to have sisters like you. I watched it from my hospital bed, heart monitor blinking steadily, and laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was familiar. This was their favorite trick. Rewrite the story so they were the caretakers and I was the problem that needed managing. Lila reposted it with a heart emoji and the caption. We're praying for healing. Healing. They tried to take legal control of my life 48 hours earlier. But sure. Healing. Then the messages started coming in from people I barely recognized. Old coworkers asking if I was okay. A former roommate offering support. Someone I dated years ago sending condolences for a rough time. That's when I realized how far they were pushing it. They weren't just venting. They were laying groundwork. Painting my hospitalization as a breakdown. My silence as instability. My boundaries as proof I'd changed. It might have worked if they weren't so bad at coordination. Lila couldn't resist attention. She posted again. A throwback photo of all of us at the lake, years ago. Smiling. Cropped so I was half out of frame. The caption read, no matter what happens, family is forever. Forever is a dangerous word when receipts exist. Rowan followed up with another video, this one longer. More emotional. More polished. She talked about how money changes people. How success can make someone forget where they came from. Which was impressive, considering I was the only reason they hadn't lost the house years earlier. But the internet has a short patience for hypocrisy. And a long memory. Someone commented under Rowan's video. Just one sentence. Weren't you all posting Family Day, no chaos while she was in the hospital? Within minutes, someone else replied with a screenshot. Lila's post. The tag. The timestamp. Then another person added more. Rowan tweeting years ago about people who fake trauma for sympathy. My mother posting a birthday dinner photo the day after doctors called her. Lila bragging about a trip funded right around the time she'd asked me for help. The tone shifted. Support turned into questions. Questions turned into digging. People stitched videos side by side. Screenshots stacked like dominoes. The narrative cracked. Then it broke. Rowan's online shop started getting flooded with refund demands. Collaborations quietly disappeared. Lila's sponsorships evaporated overnight. One brand even tagged her in an apology post before unfollowing. My father's job didn't survive the attention either. A client recognized him from a thread. Asked questions during a meeting. Human resources got involved. By the end of the week, he was on leave. Then gone. Everything they'd built on control and silence was collapsing under daylight. My phone buzzed once more. A text from my mother. Please. Can we talk? No guilt trip. No justification. Just desperation. I stared at it longer than I expected. And felt nothing. No triumph. No satisfaction. Just distance. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my notes app and added more names to the list of things to close, cancel, and cut. Because they still weren't done. People like that never stop when exposed. They escalate. And they were about to make their boldest move yet. I thought the exposure would stop them. I was wrong. Selfish people don't surrender. They adapt. I'd just been discharged. Still weak, still moving carefully, but finally free of the machines. My grandfather picked me up himself. He didn't ask where I wanted to go. He already knew. Not home, he said. Somewhere quiet. I didn't argue. Halfway to his place, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. You should come by the house. We need to talk. Urgently. Rowan. I deleted it without replying. 2 hours later, my friend called voice tight, already halfway into panic. Have you checked social media? I hadn't. I did then. They'd posted again. All 4 of them standing in front of the old house. A rented truck behind them. Boxes stacked dramatically at their feet. My father off to the side holding one like a prop he didn't understand. They looked devastated. Convincingly so. The caption read, "Losing everything hurts. Especially when it's because your own blood turned on you. But we forgive her. She's still our family. We just want her to come home before it's too late." The comments were split. Half sympathy, half suspicion. What made my stomach drop was the final photo in the post. A framed childhood picture of me, held carefully in Rowan's hands. The caption underneath. Her room is ready. Family is forever. It wasn't guilt. It was a threat. An emotional ransom designed to corner me publicly. Either come back or look cruel. I didn't respond. The next day a letter arrived. Official. Stamped. Heavy. Not from my grandfather. From my father. A newly drafted will. It outlined what little he still had and stated, very clearly, that I was disinherited until I returned to the family and reconciled. I laughed. Not because it hurt. Because it was exactly who they were. The final card had always been control through obligation. They just didn't realize something had changed. I didn't want back in. I wanted out. So my lawyer responded for me. A clean letter. Waiving any claim to their estate.
Issuing permanent no contact instruction.
Removing them as emergency contacts or next of kin for any medical or legal decision. Final. Then they escalated again. A hospital staff member knocked on my door that afternoon. There's a woman downstairs claiming to be your medical proxy. I didn't even need to ask. Rowan. Trying to speak to my doctors. Trying to override my decisions. Trying to take my voice. Security escorted her out. That should have been the end. It wasn't. My grandfather came in later with a manila envelope. And the kind of calm that means someone has already done something unforgivable. Inside were emails. My parents had contacted another law firm. They were pursuing emergency conservatorship. Over me. They claimed I was mentally unstable. Erratic. Unable to manage my finances. That my recent behavior, cutting them off, proved I was spiraling after my medical event. They wanted legal control. To freeze my accounts. Reverse the changes. Put my father in charge. The same people who hadn't visited me when I collapsed were now telling the court I couldn't be trusted to care for myself. I sat there quietly. Not shaking. Not crying. Just focused. My lawyer wasn't surprised. He said families like this don't panic when they lose access. They attack credibility. They hope to file fast. Before I could respond, they didn't know we'd already moved. Medical statements confirming I was stable. Employer letters confirming my job and leave. Financial documentation showing clear, rational decisions. The petition never made it to a judge. Their lawyer withdrew. Quietly. But the damage attempt didn't stop. The rumor machine was already running. People messaged me offering support. Old acquaintances apologized for what I was going through. Someone asked if I needed help getting back on my feet. They were reframing my survival as a breakdown. And it might have worked. If they weren't sloppy. Rowan posted again. This one was polished. Music. Tears. Talking about invisible illness and loving someone who doesn't know they're sick. The internet watched. Then someone posted a side-by-side. Her crying video. Lila's family day no chaos post. Same week. Same timeline. Everything flipped. And that was when they finally realized. They'd lost control of the story. The internet didn't forgive them. It dissected them. Once the timeline was exposed, everything they touched started unraveling. Not dramatically at first. Quietly. One dropped partnership. One deleted comment. One unanswered email. Then momentum took over. Rowan's online shop went dark within days. Reviews flooded in, not insults, just screenshots and dates. Customers asking why she was selling healing candles, while publicly smearing a sibling in recovery. Lila lost every sponsorship she had left. One brand issued a public apology for not doing due diligence. Another simply unfollowed her and pretended she'd never existed. My father didn't bounce back either. His industry values reputation, and once clients start whispering about character, it's over. He tried to explain. He got defensive. That only made it worse. By the end of the month, everything they'd built on leverage, silence, and entitlement had collapsed under scrutiny. That's when my mother finally stopped performing. She sent one last message. Please, can we talk? Same words as before. Still no apology. Still no accountability. I read it once. Then archived the conversation. Not blocked. Not dramatic. Just closed. Because the truth was, I wasn't angry anymore. Anger requires hope that something could have been different. I didn't have that. What I had was clarity. They had tried guilt, then public shame, then legal force, then emotional blackmail disguised as forgiveness. When none of that worked, they tried legacy, the will, the threat of erasure. What they never understood was that being erased from a system built on extraction wasn't punishment. It was freedom. My lawyer finalized everything within days. Permanent no-contact orders. Medical authority stripped. Legal distance drawn so clean it couldn't be misunderstood. 2 weeks later, my grandfather and I left the state. He said he wanted to see the mountains again. I didn't ask why. I knew. We found a small cabin just outside a quiet town where nobody knew our last name and nobody cared. I took a remote position. Reduced my hours. Let my body heal without apologizing for it. I started sleeping again. Breathing again. Reading books without checking my phone every few minutes, waiting for another emergency that wasn't mine to fix. Sometimes people from the past reach out. A cousin, an old neighbor, someone curious about what really happened. I never explain. People like my family are excellent storytellers. In their version, they're always the victims. Always betrayed. Always confused about why someone changed. Let them keep that story. I have something better. I have peace. And peace is worth more than being loved by people who only cared when I was useful. That's the part they'll never understand. I didn't collapse because I was weak. I collapsed because I carried what was never mine to hold. And when I finally let go, I survived. Please click the subscribe button, like, share and comment. This will encourage me to make more interesting stories. Also, let's know where you are watching from. Thank you and see you in the next story.